So I went and I talked to these people, and they were incredibly nice and they had very good energy. So I began to shiver. And when one of the guys noticed this, he said, why don't you go get some tea? I thought that was a good idea. And when I turned around, those 4 men had completely disappeared. Was I talking to angels? Who were these people? What was happening? Hello everyone, and welcome back to Jesus' Soul. I'm so happy that you're joining us here now for the second part of my spiritual creation story. Please like, subscribe, and hit the notification button. It really helps as we grow and expand this particular channel. If you missed part 1, you can find the link for that either in the description box or you can click right here. My name is Shimon Klinger. This channel is called Jesus' Soul, and it aims to reveal the secrets of the Gospel of John. Those videos are forthcoming. Right now we are talking about and looking at my personal creation story and what I went through to become the person that I am. So in part 1 of this video, I had just gotten into a huge argument with my girlfriend at the time. She was of a different religion, I was Christian, and through that conflict, I left all of my Christianity behind, and that is where this particular story begins. So thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you enjoy. So the next morning, after this explosive conversation with my girlfriend at the time, after abandoning all of my Christian beliefs in a moment, I woke up for the first time depressed. I did not have access to the sorts of spiritual tools that allowed me to rise from that situation. I didn't have Christianity to fall back on. Within a couple of years, my girlfriend at the time broke up with me, which snowballed my depression. Eventually, it got to be so bad that I entered into therapy. This is where I began the process of getting to know who I really was and figuring out what I really truly believed. Eventually, I went to a doctor who put me on antidepressants and made me feel a little bit better, but it certainly did not get to the core of what my issues were. And then about a year later, something major happened. I was journaling, I had smoked a little bit of weed, and suddenly I had an epiphany. For the first time in my life, I could see the importance of a memory that had happened when I was about 8 years old. And in this memory, for the first time, I could see the consequences of it. It was a moment of sexual abuse by 2 people that were close to me. And I realized that that particular moment had stayed with me. It had somehow shaped me, and it somehow created the person that I was. I realized that I was wounded, and part of that wounding was caused by that moment. The epiphany, though, I realized that I didn't have nearly as much control over things as I thought. Now, this epiphany somehow opened up a spiritual doorway or spiritual gateway, because what followed from that particular epiphany in the months after it was that I began to see coincidences everywhere. For example, I would be at a bar with a friend. I had an intuition that I would see my ex. And I told that to my friend. I said, you know what, I think my ex is going to walk in. And sure enough, 15 minutes later, she walked in. Or I was in the supermarket and I had a thought. I had a thought of a coworker that I worked with, like when I was in high school, maybe 10 years prior. I hadn't thought about this person in years. And like within a couple of days of having this small thought, I received an email from this person, like completely out of the blue. These types of incidences began to occur on a pretty regular basis. And they were powerful. They felt like they meant something. It felt like for the first time that God was actually like speaking to me through them. They seemed more real than other things in regular life. And what's more is that the coincidences seem to be increasing in both frequency and in intensity. It's like God was trying to tell me something through them. They seemed to be leading to something. And within 6 months, they would lead to the most intense situation that I have ever experienced in my entire life. So at this time, I was about 26. It was the year 2000, and was still grappling with depression, grappling with the breakup, trying to recover from it. So I decided that what I would do is I would book a trip back to England to re-experience all of these really sacred places and experiences that I had had falling in love. And I reasoned that this was a way to let go of the relationship. So the night before I left on this trip, I stayed up all night packing. The next day, my flight left. It was a red-eye flight. And by the time I got to England, I had not slept in 2 full days. When I arrived, I sort of lost my mind. I lost all ability to make decisions for myself. And I stepped into what seemed to be a 5-day-long continual coincidence. So when I say that I lost my decision-making ability, what happened is that I was instead led around England by my soul, by some force within me that was incredibly intelligent, that knew England intently. And I followed. And where I went and how I was directed was by looking at particular signs, like street signs. So on that first morning, I decided that I had wanted to go to Hyde Park, which is a huge park in London. There was an area at Hyde Park called the Speaker's Corner. So without having any knowledge of London or how to get there, I was led by my soul. So I left the dorm that I was staying in, my sister's dorm, and I was led by particular signs. So I saw an arrow, and that led me to go right. And then another arrow led me to go left. And before I knew it, I was at the subway and led me to Hyde Park. And before I knew it, I was at Speaker's Corner, despite not having any idea of how to get there. The Speaker's Corner is a place where people get on stools and they just speak to whoever wants to listen. And in that state of mind where I was completely sleep deprived and sort of lost my mind, I was also able to see sort of underneath everyone's persona. I could see that for some people there, they were sort of possessed. I remember there was one guy in particular who was like sort of possessed by this like bull-like entity or something. And he was rumbling through the crowd and sort of kind of getting in people's faces and wagging his finger, and it was really intense. I could see other people who were standing up and they were just sort of like possessed by this anger. I was perceiving in ways that I had never been able to perceive before. And while I was there, I didn't see anyone in particular who I really wanted to talk with or spend time with until I saw a group of maybe 3 or 4 people who had a sign that was sort of describing their Indian guru. So I went and I talked to these people, and they were incredibly nice and they had very good energy. And I noticed that one of them, sort of the leader of the 4, looked exactly like the Dalai Lama. And in fact, the guy that was sort of possessed by the bull-like creature, he came over to him and actually he said to him in a very kind way, he said, "Aren't you the Dalai Lama?" And of course, the guy was dressed normally. He said, No. He says, No, you're the Dalai Lama. And the guy denied it. So as I was speaking to these people, I was also underdressed. This was the first morning that I was in England, and it was really cold. So I began to shiver. And when one of the guys noticed this, he said, why don't you go get some tea? There's a kiosk, and the kiosk was maybe 10, 20 feet away. I thought that was a good idea, so I turned around. I walked to the kiosk. It was a very short distance. And when I turned around, those 4 men had completely disappeared. I hadn't gone very far. And if they had all of a sudden turned and started walking away, I would have been able to easily see them because it was a very short time. It was a very short distance. Was I talking to angels? Who were these people? What was happening? So I eventually got cold and tired, and my soul again led me back to my sister's dorm, even though I had no idea how to get there in this very strange and unknown city. But also at that time, I began to see that existence and life was like this, some sort of symphony, that everything happened in a perfect way. And because of our egos, we're not able to see what that symphony is, but I could see in that time, in that moment, this perfection, that everything happened and everything had a reason for happening. So when I got back that afternoon, my soul again basically asked me to leave and directed me to a huge Hindu temple in London. It directed me to take my shoes off and directed me down into this sort of inner sanctum of this temple. And there were these huge statues of these Hindu gods. I didn't know who they were, but my soul again instructed me to prostrate myself in front of these gods. And I did. Again, I didn't have much ability to make decisions one way or another. I was literally just following what my soul was directing through the signs that I saw. So that night, I didn't sleep again. So by the next morning, I was going on 3 nights without sleeping. But that night, I was given the first of several tests by the light, by God. And I suspect that he sensed that I was about to face a very challenging situation and a very serious dilemma. So that night, my soul gave me my first test of this experience. When I got back to my sister's dorm, my soul said, "You get one wish, and whatever you wish is going to come true. You need to make your decision by morning." Can you imagine? What would you wish for? Serious thing. I began to really go within myself and trying to figure out what would be the best thing to wish. At the time, I was really into music. I thought maybe I could maybe I could wish to be rich and to have a record company. And finally, several hours into this night and into this dilemma, in my mind's eye, I saw this huge pendulum swinging from one side to the other side to the other side. And if you know physics, without the presence of air, a pendulum will swing forever. And I realized through that vision that without some sort of divine intervention, that I would forever be stuck, swinging from one emotional pole to the other emotional pole to the other emotional pole. So after thinking about it deeply and realizing that if I did not, in essence, ask for my health, right? Because I had been up so many nights. At this point, it had been 4 nights that I had not gotten any sleep. I decided to ask simply go to sleep. But in doing that, I was also asking for my health, and I was also asking for that pendulum to still. Probably by 4 a.m., I made my wish. My wish was simply to get some sleep. And sure enough, that wish was granted. Now granted, I only got to sleep for that was the first sleep in 4 days that I got. So with this, we now conclude part 2 of this particular series. In the next video, we will look at what happened and what I experienced in my very lowest moment that I've ever encountered in my entire life. I hope you enjoyed. Look forward to seeing you in the next video. Please like and subscribe. It really helps as we grow and expand this particular channel. Have a great day, everyone. Love you all. See you guys soon.